So as we enter the commencement season, it's been our tradition to celebrate student success at the April board meeting, and this year is no exception. We've invited an exceptional undergraduate researcher today. Some of you have already met her at the Winter University event in February. Mariam Sayed is an undergraduate senior in the College of Arts and Letters, the College of Natural Science, and the Honors College, and she will soon earn bachelor's degrees in both physiology and French. She aspires to leverage these degrees in her extracurricular activities as a Dean's Research Scholar, Wielenga Research Scholar, resident assistant, chemistry teaching assistant, and president of the MSU French Club to attend medical school after graduation. I'm not sure when she sleeps. This is her 9th year studying French, although she knows 5 languages, and she plans to use her language skills to serve in francophone countries that need medical aid and support. Her hope is to reduce health disparities by serving the underprivileged populations as a culturally accustomed healthcare provider, since many women in conservative communities will not seek medical assistance unless the doctor is also a woman. Her passion is to empower these women to pursue higher education themselves and to become independent individuals who can contribute back to their societies by pursuing careers in STEM and healthcare. Ultimately, her goal is to serve for the international medical organization known as Médecins Sans Frontières. I hope my pronunciation was okay, or Doctors Without Borders. Mariam is a research assistant in the MSU Speech, Language, and Neurocognition Lab, where she is mentored by Dr. Laura Dilley. She currently is investigating technologies to assist marginalized populations like autistic and other non-speaking individuals with new methods of communication, and she will be sharing more about her research with us this morning. This is a timely presentation as April is also Autism Acceptance Month. Before we begin, I would like to congratulate Mariam. She recently learned that she has received a Fulbright Award for the upcoming year and will serve as an instructor, independent researcher, and U.S. Ambassador of Educational and Cultural Exchanges in Morocco. Please welcome Mariam Sayed.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Gage. For the record, that was formidable pronunciation. So that was excellent. So I'm Mariam Sayed. I work for Dr. Laura Dilley, and I'll be representing the MSU Speech, Language, and Neurocognition Lab. And my research is focused on fostering societal transformations and attitudes towards neurodivergent populations. I know that's a mouthful, but we're going to start defining all of these terms. So we're going to start with neurodiversity. What exactly is neurodiversity? So this is considered a revolutionary concept for autism and psychiatry today. And basically what this is a growing social movement that categorizes the population into 2 different groups of people. The first of which is the neurotypical population. And these are individuals who have a neurocognitive function that falls into a socially acceptable range. The second group of individuals are called neurodivergent individuals. And these are individuals who have neural pathways or cognitive functions that are significantly different from what is considered the social norm. And what the neurodiversity movement does is it introduces these individuals who are neurodivergent as profiles of diversity, the same way we do with race, religion, gender, and sexual identities, as having strengths and weaknesses, rather than pathologizing these individuals, as has been done in the clinical sphere over and over again. And what this allows us to do is to remove stigmas, remove stereotypes, and remove labels around these individuals being inherently disabled or inherently inferior to the neurotypical population. And while the neurodiversity movement addresses and describes a number of different identities, which include autism, ADHD, epilepsy, schizophrenia, and a number of other identities, our lab is specifically studying autism. And more specifically, we're focusing on non-speaking autistic individuals. So what does non-speaking mean? Non-speaking basically describes the groups of individuals who are autistic, who have any kind of limited capacity to be able to verbally express themselves. So they have some kind of hindrance when it comes to their ability to speak. And that can present itself in a number of ways. The first of which is stuttering. They can also have repetition of words over and over again, but they can also have a complete inability to be able to produce the sound of speech. And what we see in this upper right-hand corner here, this is what's called an AAC device. This is a standardized device that's being used for every single autistic individual today to be able to communicate with the world around them. And what you see up here, this is an autistic child using a letterboard. This is an AAC device. Again, this is called an augmentative and alternative communication device. And what you see here is that it requires the physical presence of an assistant every single time that this AAC device is being used. Or in other words, every single time that an autistic individual wants to speak to the people around them. And what we see is that 1/3 of the entire autistic population has some kind of limited ability to use speech. In other words, 1/3 of the entire autistic population is considered non-speaking. And the issue with autism is that autism is something that affects every single individual so uniquely that it doesn't make any sense to use a standardized one-size-fits-all device for every single autistic individual. There's no single way to diagnose autism. There's no single way or single litmus test that will tell you you definitely have autism or you definitely don't have autism. And what we see here with some of the issues with the standardized AAC devices being used today is, one, you have to have the physical presence of another assistant every single time that an autistic individual wants to speak to the people around them, which compromises the reliability in their communication. Another issue is that we see that there's so much diversity within the autistic population that we can't use a one-size-fits-all device and expect it to work for the entire autistic population. Another issue that we see today with these standardized AAC devices is that the training is focused on the assistant. We're focused on making sure that the assistant understands how to use the software, the new software that's being updated every couple of years, instead of focusing on the autistic individual themselves and finding out what is most beneficial for that autistic individual. And the same issue is seen with technology. We're more distracted and more excited about the newest technology that's coming out and updating these AAC devices with what is considered the newest software, instead of making sure that that is the most efficient and effective way to help the autistic individual communicate with the people around them. So what our lab is trying to do is trying to demonstrate that a lack of ability to communicate doesn't necessarily translate to a lack of intelligence or a lack of intellectual capability. And we're trying to demonstrate that autistic individuals do have a desire to communicate. They're intellectually capable of communicating. And the thing that bridges these two things together is finding an AAC device that meets the specific needs of every single individual, so they're able to effectively and reliably communicate with the world around them. The way that we're doing that is moving away from what was known as a medical model of disability to something that is now known as the social model of disability, which says that it's the arrangement of society that's the problem, not the disabled person themselves. And what you see here is a woman in a wheelchair and some stairs in front of her. The medical model of disability would have said that it's her impairment that's the problem. The fact that she's in a wheelchair is the issue. So what we should do is we should change her, we should cure her, we should give her prosthetics so that she's able to get up and walk and function like everybody else in society. Or in other words, what's considered the social norm. What the social model says is that the issue is not that she's in a wheelchair. It's not her fault that she's in a wheelchair. The issue here is that we have stairs in front of her when we have the technology and resources to build a ramp. And so what we're trying to show is that you don't need to change the individual in order for them to be able to integrate into society. And one of our previous research studies had actually taken a corpus of 14 self-narratives from non-speaking autistic individuals. And what we did was categorize the sentiments across all of their phrases. And we found that the most expressed sentiment was a desire for change. These were non-speaking autistic individuals who were literary scholars, who were published poets, who were comedians, who had contributed to society in literature and in the arts at large, despite being non-speaking autistic individuals. And they all expressed a desire for change in the way that autistic individuals were being perceived in society, and a desire for change in the number of opportunities that they had when it came to a social, educational, and employment context. So what are we doing in the lab to work towards a solution for these issues? Well, for one, we're replacing this standardized AAC device with something known as a head-mounted eye tracker, which you see on this lady here. So this basically uses visual fixation to visually fixate letters onto a screen, onto a letterboard, and that forms words, and that's able to relay those words to the people around you. And what we see, the benefits with these head-mounted eye trackers is, for one, it gives autistic individuals complete communicative agency. There's no need. It eliminates the need for having a physical presence of some kind of assistant present. So that doesn't compromise the reliability in their speech any longer. It also uniquely fits the needs of many nonverbal autistic individuals who are impaired by some kind of a physical disability. Some autistic individuals don't have the ability to touch the letterboard, and that's why they need an assistant present. And this eliminates the need for that altogether. A previous study that had these head-mounted eye trackers, showing them in comparison with the standardized AAC device, showed that the non-speaking autistic individuals had increased speed, increased fluency, and increased accuracy in their ability to effectively and reliably communicate with the world around them. And finally, There's hardly any training required with these head-mounted eye trackers. As was done with the standardized AAC devices, you'd now no longer need a speech pathologist and an autistic individual to spend hours in a clinic trying to learn a new software that keeps updating itself every couple of years. Instead, you have a machine that's able to do everything by itself, and all you need is the function of the eyes to be able to visually fixate words onto a screen. And so apart from these head-mounted eye trackers and AAC devices, another thing we're doing in the lab is using reframed language that's preferred by neurodivergent, non-speaking autistic individuals. So we're moving away from person-first language, and the concept behind person-first language, which is used in published medical journals today in many major research journals, the idea behind that was that you're a person first before anything else. And what our lab is doing is arguing that identity first is actually more effective. So you're acknowledging the identity before anything else. So if you take, for example, some identity, like an African-American person, you don't describe that person as a person with African-Americanness. You describe them as an African-American person because that's part of their identity and it's an integral part of who they are. And the same applies for autistic individuals. They prefer to be addressed as autistic individuals rather than a person with autism. That implies that they're inherently inferior to the neurotypical population. And so again, what all of this is allowing us to do is to support the neurodiversity movement by recognizing autistic individuals as profiles of diversity rather than as pathologized individuals. So you might be wondering, why does it matter, right? Why is everything that we're doing in this lab, the hours of research that we're putting into finding a new AAC device to replace the standardized device that's been used in clinics, why does it matter? We believe in the lab that history is repeating itself. In the same way that race, religion, gender, and sexual identities have been discriminated against in the past and have had inequity in their access to social, educational, and employment opportunities, we see that the same thing is happening with autistic individuals today. They don't have a voice to voice their opinions. They don't have the means and the resources to be able to express their identity and express their feelings to the people around them, which is limiting their ability in society and in healthcare. And we believe in the lab that access to communication is a fundamental human right, and everybody deserves to freely express themselves, to have equal opportunity, and everyone deserves to have a voice and to be heard by the rest of the individuals in society. Thank you.
Questions for Mariam?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I find your presentation very fascinating. I have a 3.5-year-old grandson who does not speak. He's very mobile, has great motor skills, is just starting to form words. And you have some interesting science and approach. I'm wondering how you implement change. I mean, you have some, and my daughter who's in Spokane, Washington, who's got tremendous resources available to her, cannot get the special ed departments, the departments of education, the people who should be providing these resources to really take this seriously and to provide the resources they need. Of course, having math didn't help either, because the ability to see how words are formed doesn't help. So I'm wondering, how do you, I've been involved in a lot of medical devices and things, and getting doctors and government and Medicare and insurance companies to pay for a groundbreaking service or equipment is difficult sometimes because people are used to the status quo. You have already experienced a lot of status quo headwinds. So how do you implement change going forward?
That's a great question. So that's pretty much our next step in research. So right now what we've done is found a device that people can be using that replaces a standardized AAC device. And what we're focused on is taking narratives from people who are non-speaking autistic individuals, because who better understands the experience of those people than those people themselves. So what we do is we're working with a lot of people who are non-speaking, who are autistic individuals, who identify with that population, who have contributed to society at large. So these people have done amazing things. They've published, they're authors, they're poets, they're comedians, and those people are advocating. We're basically giving them a platform to advocate, and we're having them come into our lab. We're talking to different clinics, and we're basically giving them a platform to be able to share their experiences with the world and publish this kind of research that shows that the desires, that the sentiments that these non-speaking autistic individuals have and have been silenced in history. Basically what we're doing is giving them that platform to be able to show the world that non-speaking autistic individuals do have a desire to communicate, and they're intellectually capable of doing so. What they lack is the resources.
Let me just ask one last question.
Sure.
The research that you're doing, is it leading to a medical tool that allows autistic children to speak and have their voices heard? Or is it more the consultation and approach that you're trying to get people to adopt?
It's both. So we're using grounded practical theory basically to reanalyze how medical people, so people who are basically speech pathologists, people who are working directly with autistic individuals, how they're working with them, and also with educators. So a lot of this has to do with the way that people are treating individuals. So the reframe language, that has to do with basically working with a new training program, creating a new training program on how to deal with non-speaking autistic individuals, because the way that we're treating them now, they're just segregated from society. We just have a special ed classroom where they're not integrated with the rest of society. They're not integrated with the other students. And so what we're doing is trying to create a new model. And the way that we have to do that is be able to publish this research. There's millions of steps involved, but this is one of the things that we're doing. So one is using reframed language. The other one is finding a device that works and that is affordable and can be used in clinics. Across, any education sphere, any employment context, any social context, and making it accessible to everybody.
Good luck. And
Thank
thank you
you
for your presentation.
Thank
Other
you.
questions? I just want to again compliment you on the work and the depth of your understanding. As an undergraduate, without minimizing how great our undergraduates are at MSU, it's still tough sometimes to join a lab with complex technical as well as these kind of societal impacts, and to be able to discuss it as eloquently as you can and bring it out in ways all of us, I think, we're able to understand is great. I think usually I want to call you Dr. Sayed. So it's going to
My mom would be so happy to hear that.
I will call you Mariam if that's okay. Could you just give us a few minutes on how you found your way to MSU and kind of what are some of the ways that got you to this great, I think, synergistic position in the lab?
Sure. So I think this is one of the more forbidden subjects, but I considered transferring my first year because I was like, I didn't get into one of the universities that I wanted. And I thought that was my first choice. And then I spent my first year here and I had so many opportunities. It would be absolutely ridiculous for me to transfer to another university. So when I joined here, I was an executive member of the French Club. I was part of the Wielenga Research Scholarship, and I was a part of so many different programs, both in natural science and also in the College of Arts and Letters. And I think a lot of other universities, they have a very locked in curriculum. You have to follow one single path. Like you can't pursue physiology and French. Like it doesn't make any sense. There's no connection between the both of them. So you have to choose one or the other. And telling my mom that I'm a French major would just not be sufficient. So here at this university, I think it gave me such flexibility to be able to pursue what I wanted. You don't have to limit your capabilities and your talents and whatever you're interested in, all of your passions. You can combine them and carve your own path, carve your own career path, basically. And that's what MSU allowed me to do. I'm able to pursue physiology and French. And the way that I put them together, as Dr. Gage explained, is I'm interested in working with underprivileged and marginalized populations that are minority populations in the Francosphere. So basically in the world where French is spoken and French language has been implemented because those areas were colonized, there's a lot of populations that are underrepresented in medicine and in healthcare. And I'm really interested in working with those populations. So as Dr. Gage mentioned, one of the biggest things is women's health. So in women's health, in a lot of these populations, I come from a pretty conservative and traditional background. And a lot of the women who come from these areas, even though they speak a different language, they have the same exact experience that we grew up seeing. And what that is that a lot of women who are in these areas, they won't grow up and get educated. They don't have access to an education, or they're not willing to get educated, or they'll prioritize marriage over education. And what happens is a lot of those women who have some kind of, they need treatment. They need to get, treated. They need to see a doctor regularly. And they refuse to seek treatment because there's not enough women in those populations who are doctors. They don't go and get an education. They don't pursue, education in healthcare and in STEM and in these fields. And so because they're not able to see a female physician, these female patients won't go and see them, and they'll just refuse to get any treatment at all. And so what I'm interested in doing is going back to those populations and helping fill that gap between female patients and female physicians. And that really would have been impossible for me to do without having a university that supports me so well in both the College of Arts and Letters and also in the College of Natural Science. So thank you, MSU.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess Rima has her hand
Oh,
up
I'm
too.
sorry.
Just for the
Yeah.
record.
So Rima and then
Yeah.
Trustee Kanaki. Yes.
Oh, wow. So someone was able to find my hand. Thank you, Trustee Steve. I think it was you. Let me raise this. So it's always a pleasure, Ms. Sayed, to hear from you. Your challenges of structures and use of empowering language for individuals calls for systems and environment change, and it's refreshing. We know the evolution of language is really, really important in thinking about how we pose questions. And you and your challenge to deficit language you're doing that work. So it's not that you have to come up with a solution to all things that ail us. This problem posing, this reframing of individuals and how they want to be really, really, and it is, as said, doctoral level work. So it's not going to be maybe next week. That's coming soon, I'm sure. I'm just so happy for your success and excited about this important research. I'm encouraged by your devotion to marginalized folks around the world. And MSU is fortunate to be a part of your story. Please keep us abreast of when you're serving all these folks around the world that are minoritized. And just know also that you're so very necessary, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rima Bassar, from the bits and pieces that I heard. Thank you so much. That means so much to me. And I'm very lucky to be surrounded by the mentors, and the professionals that I've had in my career. If it wasn't for the faculty, if it wasn't for the mentors, if it wasn't for the Board of Trustees, the president, the provost, everybody who's literally supported me in my career, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you to you as well.
Yeah, I just had a quick follow-up really to President Stanley's question about what got you here. I couldn't help but notice that you've been awarded a Fulbright, and as a Fulbright myself, I'm biased, and I was recently named a Fulbright ambassador, alumni ambassador.
Congratulations.
So I can tell already you're going to be a fabulous ambassador yourself. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing with the Fulbright.
Yes, absolutely. So from what we know, there's a lot that we still don't know. So we still have to find out about our city of placement and stuff that'll happen in the coming weeks. But what I do know is that what I applied for was an ETA position with an availability to also do independent research. So I'll be teaching at a university in Morocco. And I'm hoping to do basically lead a club, an extracurricular club that focuses on women's empowerment going into STEM and into healthcare. And so we'll be working on, there's a big issue in Morocco where a lot of students, they grow up learning the traditional language, which is Darija Arabic in that area. And then when they come to the university, they just automatically start teaching French. And so a lot of students drop out of school because they're not able to keep up with the language. And so we're trying to build that, fill that gap that's missing there. And then I'll hopefully be also pursuing independent research while I'm there. So that will be the upcoming academic year.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Trustee Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. So that was a great presentation. After having watched it, who's your favorite Disney character? You don't have to answer.
I just had a
Yes,
comment.
Trustee Scott.
Hopefully I can call you Miriam. I feel like we know each other now. I just have to say, every single time I've heard you speak, I'm just mesmerized and amazed. You make us look good. You make Michigan State look good. We're very proud of you, and I just want you to know and just to be publicly acknowledged that you are the best that we have to present to the world. And we have so many other students like you, and I just thank you for continuing to tell that story about why MSU versus somewhere else, because we did have these conversations just yesterday about the ability of students to change their majors or go in different tracks, and that we don't just pigeonhole you when you come here. And that is something that a lot of people look to as being the difference maker for them. And so I love to hear you say that. We're just wishing you the best. And I just want you to know I'm one of your biggest fans. So
Thank you so much.
I would echo that. This is the second time I've heard you speak, Miriam, and I continue to be amazed and extremely proud that you are a Spartan. You will be a Spartan for life here in just a few weeks once you graduate, and you will be a great ambassador. So please keep us informed as to your life's travels. We want to enjoy that happiness and that success with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Thank you, Dr. Byram. And thank you everybody else who was here today. Thank you for the questions and comments. It was a pleasure to be here today. So thank you.
thank you.